The notification came at 7:14 on a Tuesday morning, while I was still in bed with cold coffee and my phone half charged on the nightstand. My sister had posted a reel. 6 women in matching dusty rose robes, holding champagne flutes, laughing in the kind of golden light that only happens when someone's paid a professional photographer to follow you around. The caption read, "My girls. My forever. Can't believe the wedding is in 3 months." I scrolled through the faces. My mother was second from the left, cheeks flushed and beaming. My Aunt Carol was there, 3 of my sister's college friends I barely knew. A woman I'd never seen before. I wasn't. I sat up slowly, set the coffee down, and scrolled again. Counted the faces, 6. Looked for myself in the background, the edges, somewhere, nothing. My sister had chosen 6 women to stand beside her on the most important day of her life, and I, her older sister by 4 years, was not one of them. I called her immediately. It rang 4 times before she picked up, her voice bright and slightly out of breath, like she'd been laughing about something just before answering. "Hey, what's up? I saw your reel," I said. I kept my voice even. The bridesmaid announcement. A pause. A very deliberate, very short pause. "Oh, yeah, I was going to talk to you about that." "Okay," I said. "Talk. It's just you know how weddings are. We're keeping the party small." 6 felt right. "It's not a big deal. It's not a big deal." I stared at the ceiling of my apartment in Austin, at the small water stain above the window I'd been meaning to report to my landlord for 3 months. My sister was getting married in the fall. She had not asked me to be in her wedding. And her explanation was, "It's not a big deal. You picked Aunt Carol," I said. "You haven't spoken to Aunt Carol since her dog knocked over your Christmas tree 2 years ago." "That was different." "How?" Another pause. Longer this time. "I just think, Nora, you can be a lot. You know how you get when you're stressed, and weddings are stressful, and I just need my girls to be supportive right now. I can be a lot." I sat with that sentence for a moment, turning it over, looking at it from every angle. I can be a lot. This, from the woman I had driven 4 hours to help move out of her apartment when her last boyfriend left. This, from the woman whose security deposit I covered when she left that same apartment 6 months early without telling the landlord. This, from the woman I had co-signed a boutique loan for 2 years ago because she'd wanted to open a candle business with her best friend, and the bank wouldn't touch her credit score. "Got it," I said. "Don't be like that." "I'm not being like anything. I've got a client call in 20 minutes. I'll talk to you later." I hung up before she could answer, and sat in the quiet of my apartment for a long time. The morning light moved across the floor. My coffee went from cold to room temperature. Outside, someone was mowing a lawn, the sound steady and purposeful and completely indifferent to the thing that had just been confirmed inside my chest, something I had suspected for years but kept choosing not to name. My sister didn't see me as a sister. She saw me as a resource. I met my best friend Jade for lunch that afternoon at a taco place near her office downtown. She listened to the whole story without interrupting, which is one of the reasons I've kept her around for 12 years. "Okay," she said when I finished. "So your mother knew. She has to. She's in the reel. And she didn't warn you. She never warns me about anything that might cause inconvenience to my sister." Jade pulled apart a tortilla chip, not eating it, just breaking it into smaller pieces. "Nora, I want to ask you something, and I need you to not deflect." "When do I deflect?" "Every time something hurts." She looked up. "How much money have you given your family in the last 5 years?" I opened my mouth, closed it. The number that came to mind was uncomfortable, not because it was small. "A lot," I said. "How much is a lot?" I picked up my water glass. Between my sister's loan, my mom's car repair, the thing with my dad's medical bills 2 years ago, and the various small things, probably close to $30,000. Jade was quiet for a moment. "And how much of that has been paid back?" I didn't answer, which was itself an answer. That evening, my mother called. I let it go to voicemail, then listened with one earbud while I cleaned my kitchen. Her voice was warm, practiced, the tone she uses when she already knows there's a problem and has decided the solution is to act like there isn't one. "Sweetheart, I know you saw the post. I want you to know that your sister loves you so much, and this wasn't about you at all. She just has a very specific vision for her wedding, and I think when you're not in the middle of all the planning stress, you'll see it was actually a gift that you get to just enjoy the day without any responsibilities. Call me when you get a chance. Love you. A gift. I replayed that part twice. Not being asked to stand beside my sister on her wedding day was a gift. I was so lucky. I deleted the voicemail and went to bed. The next 3 months moved the way time does when something is quietly wrong, slowly when I was paying attention, faster when I wasn't. My sister sent occasional texts asking for opinions on centerpieces, venue lighting, seating charts. I answered them because I didn't know how to stop. My mother mentioned the wedding in every call, always pivoting to how beautiful it was going to be, how proud she was, how my sister had really found a good one in Tyler. Tyler, who I had met exactly twice. Tyler, who had the particular kind of confidence that comes not from accomplishment, but from never being told no. The week before the wedding, my mother called to tell me the rehearsal dinner was a small family event, and she hoped I understood that Tyler's family was quite large and space was limited. How limited? I said. Well, just the wedding party and immediate family on his side. I'm immediate family. Of course you are, sweetheart. A small laugh. I just mean that the venue really only seats 35 comfortably, and with the wedding party being 6 on each side. Mom. Yes? Am I invited to the rehearsal dinner? A beat. We thought it might be easier for you not to feel left out of all the planning conversations. You know how that can feel, just sitting there while everyone talks about things you weren't part of. I wrote down the phrase, easier for you, on the notepad by my desk, where I keep notes during work calls. I stared at it for the rest of the conversation. Easier for me. They had decided my mother, my sister, probably Tyler, that excluding me from the rehearsal dinner was a favor, an act of mercy, protecting me from the discomfort of being around joy I hadn't helped manufacture. The wedding was on a Saturday in October. The venue was a renovated barn 40 minutes outside the city, the kind of place that appears in every bridal blog as rustic elegance. I drove myself. I sat in the 3rd row, behind a cluster of Tyler's cousins I'd never met, and watched my sister walk down the aisle on my father's arm. She was beautiful. That part was true, and I allowed myself to see it clearly, without resentment, which took more effort than it should have. The ceremony was 20 minutes. My sister cried during the vows. Tyler smiled in that steady, rehearsed way that should have been charming but landed just slightly off, like music played at the wrong speed. I smiled when the officiant smiled. I clapped when everyone clapped. I took a photo with my parents during cocktail hour, standing slightly apart from the cluster of bridesmaids who were getting a separate photo taken, and thought about nothing in particular. The reception started at 7. By 8:30, I had found a seat near the back of the barn, close to the door where the catering staff moved in and out. My table was mostly filled with distant relatives and a couple from Tyler's side who spoke mostly to each other. I was refilling my water glass from the pitcher on the table when I heard the shift in the room's volume, not louder, but different. The particular frequency of people noticing something they're not supposed to be noticing. I turned toward the dance floor. Tyler was standing near the edge of it, his jacket off, tie loosened. My sister was 2 steps away from him, her bouquet somewhere on a table behind her. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but I could read the shape of it, the tight jaw, the hand he reached out that wasn't asking, it was demanding. She pulled her arm back. He stepped forward. She said something sharp and short. He grabbed her wrist. Not hard, not a punch, not a shove, just a grip. But it was the grip of someone who thought they had the right to hold on. My sister's face went still in that particular way. Faces go still when someone is pretending, in public, not to feel what they are feeling. 3 people at the nearest table stood up at once. A groomsman appeared from somewhere. Tyler's hand dropped. My sister turned away from him and walked very quickly toward the back hallway, the one that led to the bridal suite. My mother followed. The DJ, who had been watching from the booth, dropped the volume of the current song down to almost nothing. I was already standing. Jade texted me at 9:08 p.m. She was watching from home because several guests had started posting to social media. A video was circulating, shot by someone at the table nearest the dance floor, probably not intentionally, probably just a phone that was already out. 40 seconds. Clear enough. Tyler's hand around my sister's wrist, the look on her face. Him stepping into her space in a way that said, I own the boundary here, not you. By 9:30, it was on 3 different Twitter accounts. By 10, a celebrity gossip aggregator had reposted it with the caption, Groom gets physical with bride at their own reception. Guests catch it all on camera. My phone buzzed with my mother's name at 10:17. I stood outside the barn in the October dark, listening to gravel crunch under my heels, and answered, Thank God. My mother's voice was the kind of wrecked that comes after the crying stops and the panic sets in. Are you still here? Can you come inside? Your sister she's not okay and everyone's still here and Tyler left and the photographer is asking if they should go and I don't know what to tell people. Mom? I said. Please, Nora. I know things have been just please come help. You're so good at handling things. You always know what to do. You're so good at handling things. I stood in the gravel and let the night air settle around me. The music inside had stopped. Somewhere near the parking lot, 2 men were having a conversation I couldn't make out. Call the venue coordinator, I said. She'll know the protocol for clearing guests. Call a car service for my sister, don't let her drive. And make sure someone documents everything before the photographer leaves, because you may need that for legal reasons later. Silence on my mother's end. That's what you should do, I said. I'm going home. Nora, you didn't save me a seat at the rehearsal dinner, I said. You didn't put me in the wedding party. You told me being excluded was a gift. I hope you remember that tonight, because I've got nothing left to give this family right now. I hung up, got in my car, drove home with the radio off and the windows cracked, the cool air moving through the car like something being cleared out. I slept better than I had in months. The next 2 weeks were their own kind of chaos, mostly at a distance. My sister gave a statement to a local news outlet, carefully worded, very composed, the statement of someone who had been coached. Tyler issued an apology on Instagram that was removed within 12 hours. There was a conversation happening online about warning signs and public accountability that my mother texted me about no fewer than 11 times. Each text ended with a variation of, I just hope you'll reach out to your sister when you're ready. I was not ready. What I was doing instead was going through paperwork. It started because I couldn't sleep one night and found myself in the folder on my laptop where I keep financial records. Old habit, I'm meticulous about it. Have been since my mid-20s when I realized no one else in my family was going to be. I found the co-sign documents from 2 years ago. The candle business loan. $32,000. 2-year term. My name as guarantor alongside my sister's. I clicked through to the loan servicer's website. The account was listed as past due. 6 months of missed payments. Interest accumulated. A notice flagged on the account dated August, 2 months before the wedding, that a collections process had been initiated. I sat at my kitchen table at 2 a.m. with the overhead light on and the kind of clarity that only arrives when everything you suspected turns out to be true and worse. My sister had defaulted on the loan my name was on. The collections agency wasn't going after her, they were coming after me. I spent the next 3 days pulling everything I could find. Bank records, texts, emails, the original loan documents. I found the repayment history. My sister had made 5 payments in the first year and then stopped entirely. No communication to me, no warning, no conversation. She had simply stopped paying and allowed the debt to quietly become my problem. I also found something else. A text from my mother, sent to my sister 8 months ago, that my sister had accidentally forwarded to me in a chain, one of those moments of careless multitasking. I had originally filed it away, assuming it was irrelevant. I read it now with different eyes. Don't say anything to Nora about the loan. She'll get upset and make it a whole thing. She always does. Just wait until after the wedding, and we'll figure it out together. My mother had known. My sister had told her, and my mother's advice had been to wait, to get through the wedding, to let me show up, sit in the back, clap at the right moments, and leave without knowing that in the background, my credit was being quietly destroyed. I did not call them. I called a lawyer. Her name was Diana, and she came recommended by a colleague who'd been through a difficult business dispute 2 years prior. She had silver-streaked hair and an office in the kind of building downtown that makes you feel like whatever you're about to say will be taken seriously. She listened to the whole story without interrupting. When I finished, she turned her legal pad toward me so I could see the notes. "The cosign liability is straightforward," she said. "You have full legal exposure on this debt since your sister defaulted. However, what you have here," she tapped the forwarded text, "is evidence of intent. They knew the loan was in trouble, chose not to inform you, and actively planned to delay disclosing it. That shifts this from a civil debt issue to potential fraud." "Fraud," I said. The word sounded both larger and simpler than I expected. Fraud by omission, when it results in financial harm to a cosigner who was not informed of the default. Add the text exchange, and we have documentation that the concealment was deliberate. She set down her pen. "Have you had any other financial entanglements with your family? Money sent, loans, anything on paper?" I opened the folder I'd brought. She spent 15 minutes going through it. When she set it down, she looked at me with the expression of someone who has heard a great number of variations of the same story. "This is a pattern," she said. "Not a mistake." I nodded. I had known that for years. I just hadn't had someone say it back to me in a room that smelled like legal authority and good coffee. "What do you want to happen?" she asked. I thought about my mother's text. "Wait until after the wedding and we'll figure it out together." I thought about my sister's voice when she told me being left out of the wedding party was for my own benefit. I thought about the $30,000, the missed payments, the collections notice with my name on it. "I want my name off this debt," I said. "I want to not be held responsible for a choice I didn't make. And I want them to understand that I know what they did." Diana nodded once. "We can do all three." The letter was sent on a Friday morning in November. Certified mail, return receipt, one to my sister, and one to my mother. Diana drafted it, I reviewed it, and when it went out, I sat in my car in the parking garage under Diana's building and allowed myself 2 full minutes of just breathing. My mother called that afternoon. I let it go to voicemail. My sister called that evening. I let that go too. My father, quiet, peripheral, the man who had spent my entire childhood finding reasons to leave the room when things got difficult, sent a text at 10 p.m. that read, "Nora, I think we should talk. Please." I turned my phone face down and watched a documentary about octopuses until I fell asleep on the couch. Diana called me the following week with an update. My sister had hired her own attorney, a budget version based on the response letter. The response claimed the loan default was a result of financial hardship my sister had not anticipated, that my co-signature implied willingness to cover the debt in case of hardship, and that the text message had been taken out of context. "Out of context," I repeated. "A creative argument," Diana said dryly. "We'll respond with the full documentation. I also want to flag something I had a paralegal pull the public record on your sister's business filings. The candle company was dissolved 8 months ago, before the default, meaning she knew the business was gone, which means she knew the loan payments weren't coming, well before the collections notice. So she had known even longer than August. She had known since spring, possibly earlier, that the debt was mine now. She had planned her entire wedding, asked 6 friends and her mother to stand beside her, sat across from me at my parents' dining room table during the holidays, and said nothing. I thought about calling her. I thought about it for most of one night, sitting by the window in my apartment watching headlights move through the dark street below. Part of me wanted the conversation, the confrontation, the chance to hear what she would say when there was no audience, no performance, just the 2 of us and the truth. I decided against it. I had been having that conversation my entire life. I had been explaining, asking, clarifying, seeking the acknowledgement that something unfair had happened and that it mattered. I was tired of asking for what should have been given freely. I was 31 years old, and I had spent a significant portion of that time managing other people's messes while mine accumulated in the corner. I wanted something different now. I wanted the record to reflect what had actually happened, not in a family meeting with my mother steering the narrative, not over a dinner table where someone would eventually say, "Let's not ruin the evening." In a place where the documents were what they were, where a text message that read, "Wait until after the wedding and we'll figure it out together" meant what it said. The mediation happened in December. in a conference room that was very beige and very quiet. My sister came with her attorney. My mother came too, which Diana had objected to but couldn't prevent. My father did not come. He had told my mother he wasn't able to make it, which we both understood to mean he wasn't able to be there for this and still look at himself in the mirror. My sister looked tired. She'd cut her hair since the wedding, shorter than I'd ever seen it, and she was dressed carefully, the way people dress when they want to be taken seriously by a room. My mother wore her pearls. She always wears her pearls when she needs armor. Diana laid out the documents in order. The loan agreement, the payment history, the collections notice, the text exchange, the business dissolution records. My sister's attorney made several objections, each of which Diana addressed without raising her voice. My mother sat very still and looked at the table. When Diana finished presenting, the mediator turned to my sister. "Do you dispute any of the documentation presented?" My sister's attorney began to speak. My sister put a hand on his arm and he stopped. "No," she said. Her voice was quiet. "I don't dispute it." A silence fell over the room. My mother's head turned toward my sister with an expression I had never seen on her before. Not anger, not calculation, something closer to recognition. The look of someone watching the story they've been telling themselves come undone. "Brooke," her attorney said quietly. "I knew," my sister said, still looking at the table. "I knew about the default before the wedding. I knew she'd get the collections notice eventually. I thought by then we'd have figured something out." She finally looked up, across the table, and met my eyes. I told myself it wasn't that serious, that it would work out. A pause. I told myself a lot of things. I didn't say anything. I had learned, somewhere in the last several months, that silence in these moments wasn't weakness. It was its own kind of answer. The settlement was agreed upon before the end of the session. My sister's obligation to cover the defaulted loan amount was formalized. My name was removed as guarantor. The collections notice vacated. There was a small additional sum to cover the damage to my credit, which Diana had pushed for and which my sister's attorney had argued against until my sister, again, stopped him. When we left the conference room, my mother followed me into the elevator without being invited. We rode down in silence for one full floor before she spoke. "I didn't know she was going to admit to all of it," she said. "I know," I said. "I just want you to know that we were trying to protect the family." The elevator opened. I stepped out into the lobby, the cool marble and the sound of the revolving door. "You were protecting the version of the family where no one had to be accountable," I said. "That's a different thing." I buttoned my coat. "I hope you and your daughter are okay. I genuinely do. But I'm not available to help with that right now." I walked out into the December cold and stood on the sidewalk for a moment, hands in my pockets, watching my breath disappear into the gray air. Diana appeared beside me 30 seconds later, pulling her scarf tight. "That went about as well as it could," she said. "Yeah. How do you feel?" I considered the question seriously. The honest answer was complicated, not triumphant, not resolved, not the way I'd imagined feeling at the end of something like this. Lighter was the closest word. Like I'd been carrying a bag I'd grown so used to that I'd forgotten I was carrying it, and someone had finally just asked me to set it down. "I feel like I can go home," I said. The new year arrived in the way New Year's do after something hard quietly, without much ceremony. I spent New Year's Eve with Jade and her boyfriend and 3 other friends in someone's living room. And when midnight came, I didn't make a resolution. I just stood by the window watching the fireworks over the city and thought about the version of myself from a year ago, sitting in the back of a barn at her sister's wedding, counting all the ways she'd been subtracted from the story. I thought about her kindly. She'd been doing her best. I started volunteering in February with a financial literacy nonprofit that specifically worked with people dealing with family-related financial abuse. I'd found them through a newsletter Diana had forwarded, a small program that helped people understand their rights when money and family had been weaponized against each other. I went to the first event thinking I'd stay an hour. I stayed 3. There was something in those rooms, the conference rooms of community centers, the folding chair circles of library meeting rooms that I hadn't expected. Not anger, not bitterness, mostly just relief. People telling the truth about what had happened to them, some of them for the first time. A woman in her 40s who had co-signed her daughter's car loan and found herself in collections. A man in his 60s whose brother had borrowed against the family home. Younger people, people my age, who had spent their 20s being told that helping was what family did, and were only now starting to understand the difference between help and extraction. I started speaking at the events sometimes. Not about the wedding, not about the drama, just about the pattern. The slow way it happens, how it disguises itself as love. In March, I got a letter. Not an email, an actual letter, handwritten on plain white paper. My sister's handwriting, which I'd know anywhere, all uneven loops and cramped vowels. Nora. I've started therapy. Not because anyone made me. Because I looked back at the last few years and I didn't like what I saw. I don't expect you to forgive me. I'm not even asking for that. I just wanted you to know that I know what I did. The loan, the wedding, all of it. I know. I'm sorry. B. I read it twice. Folded it. Put it in the drawer of my nightstand. I didn't write back. Not yet. Maybe not for a while. But I put it somewhere I could find it when I was ready, which felt like its own kind of answer. The spring came slowly. Austin does spring right. The air smells like cedar and rain and new grass, and the light in the late afternoon turns everything golden in a way that makes you feel, briefly, like whatever difficult thing you've been carrying was worth something. I started running again in the mornings. I took on a new client, a small restaurant group that needed a full brand redesign. I called my father once. A short call, mostly logistical, just testing whether there was still something there worth preserving. There might be. We're not sure yet. We're being careful with each other, which is a kind of beginning. One evening in April, I was sitting on my back porch with a glass of wine and my laptop when Jade sent me a link to a local news story. My sister had given an interview not about the wedding, not about Tyler, but about the nonprofit she'd started quietly working with since January. A support organization for people leaving situations involving financial coercion, run out of a church hall on the east side. Small, early, but real. I read the article twice. My sister's photo was at the top, the new short haircut, and she was looking slightly off camera the way people do when they're not comfortable with photos but showed up anyway. I spent a long time telling myself what I wanted to believe, she said near the end of the article. It's a lot harder to do the right thing when you're afraid, but the cost of not doing it is higher than I understood. I closed the laptop. The evening was very quiet. Somewhere down the block, a dog was barking at something enthusiastic and invisible. I sat with the feeling for a while, the complicated, non-linear, deeply human feeling of watching someone you've loved and been hurt by trying to become something better. I didn't call her, but I didn't push the feeling away either. I just let it be what it was. Some things don't end cleanly. Some things unravel slowly. And the unraveling is the resolution, the long, unglamorous process of people becoming more honest, or more careful, or just more tired of the versions of themselves that caused damage. My family is doing that work now, some of them more than others. I'm watching from a distance that I chose, that I protect, that I no longer feel guilty about. I'm not the family's emergency contact anymore. I'm not the one who gets called when the story starts to fall apart. That job came with a cost I paid for years without understanding. I was paying it, and when I finally put it down, the world didn't end. My sister didn't collapse. My mother didn't dissolve. They found other ways to manage, because people do. And I found out what I am when I'm not holding everyone else up. Turns out it's someone I actually like. Someone who runs in the mornings and takes on work she's proud of and sits on her back porch in April with a glass of wine and a feeling in her chest that is, slowly and without drama, becoming peace. If you've ever been the one who gives until you forget why you started, I want you to know that setting it down is allowed. The people who needed your sacrifice will survive without it. You might be surprised how much better you do.